You cannot, under any circumstances, be afraid to fail. We have too much fear that suffocates greatness. We don't talk about failure because I don't think we really understand what it can do. We're trying so hard to mass produce these great athletes that we're overexposing them to their own sport, and we're using and abusing the opportunity to become great. There's a genetic component that exists that we don't identify and give credit to that is far greater than the 9 to 5, 2,000 swings a week, bullpens, you name it. That will get that person to a level that has a peak.
Well, I want to welcome John Smoltz to the Feelin, the Healin with Foltzy podcast. John is a husband, a father, broadcaster, grandparent, granddad, grandpa.
Yeah.
Or you go by what?
Grandpa.
Grandpa. He is a broadcaster. He's a golfer. He's of course, a Hall of Famer in the MLB pitcher. He's he's in a book over here on the table.
I'm seasoned.
He's a phenomenal athlete overall. So he is a treasure chest, not a box, treasure chest of knowledge. So we're glad to have you. I want to start at the childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your childhood.
Well, most people aren't going to believe what I started out to become. I come from a musical family, and music was part of our family heritage. And I was going to be in the line of kind of, if you think about the heir apparent, accordion player. That's right, accordion. And that's, most people don't even know what an accordion is anymore. But that's really what my family kind of was known for. All my great uncles, my mom and dad, they all were accordion players. So the one good thing that came out of there is that it taught me tremendous discipline and practice and dedication. It's not easy to play, by the way.
No, because it's the thing with a piano,
like
and you squeeze it.
And you got the bass on the back.
Do we have one here?
I don't think we have one. But that's how I started out, 4 years old to 7 years old, and that's what I knew. So I pursued that until I didn't. And at 7, I really had this passion to want to play baseball. My parents didn't know much about it, but they allowed me to put down the accordion temporarily to try baseball.
And it was like polka. Polka kind of stuff, right?
My dad was in a band for 60 years, weddings, parties. See, growing up Italian, which my mom was full-blooded Italian, of course Smoltz is not. We went to a lot of parties, a lot of family gatherings, music, dancing. So it was festive, and it was always full of family.
All right. So you start off baseball young, and then you also cross sports. You played
basketball,
football.
Football till about 8th grade. And that's when my dad made a great decision of protecting me from myself, because baseball had an opportunity for a future with my arm and the way that I threw the baseball, because it kind of came out naturally. And so basketball is my first love. Baseball just happened to be what I was just a little bit better at.
And so speaking of that, so your arm started to persevere.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go into the transition of Little League to then what happened, teenage years to then
right.
the big
Fortunately
leagues.
for me, I grew up in Michigan.
Yeah.
Because the seasons in Michigan are sports seasons. When baseball's over, you transit. When basketball, baseball, football, like you didn't have the opportunity, because the summers aren't as long, to specialize and play all year in baseball, which really helped me. And because self-taught, nobody had the kind of technology back then, didn't go to any pitching clinics, didn't do anything other than throw a rubber ball against a brick wall, a good rubber ball that would come back as a rubber ball. And I would watch TV and emulate a pitcher and go out and practice it and throw it against a brick wall.
Incredible.
Well, it is when I look back at it and I go, okay, when I look back in this whole evolution of sports and what parents are trying to do, can you produce an athlete? And the answer is absolutely not.
Yep.
So genetics has a lot to do with it. I don't know how it came about. My parents aren't athletes, as I told you, but I was able to go out and self-learn and self-teach and figure out the nuances of throwing a baseball. And really, everything I did, basketball, golf, throwing a football, was all natural. And for my journey, it was perfect because Michigan allowed me to experience all the sports, not overuse and abuse one side of the sport. Because when you're throwing a baseball, it's a one-sided sport. When you're playing golf, it's a one-sided sport. And if you don't attack the other side, you get an imbalance in your body, and you put the other side at risk for more injuries. So I wish everybody could have experienced, but when you live in the South, the West, and the areas where it's warm, we're overusing this sport.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about the genetics in a second. But before we do that, competitiveness. Now, I've learned over the years, ping pong, bowling.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you play, whether it's Scrabble or Words with Friends with Foxworthy, you got to win.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're very competitive.
I am. My dad indirectly taught me how to compete, and when I say indirectly, because it was never a pressure of what I had to do from him, it was I couldn't beat him. And I couldn't wait for the day that when I beat him, it was over. He was never winning again. When I beat him in ping pong, I'm telling you, he never won again. But he taught me that inner kind of competitiveness drive to be the best version of yourself, right? Not to the point where you changed your character or you colored outside the lines to succeed in sports. And so that drive has always been there. I don't understand, honestly, and I'm not saying that I've got all this down pat. I don't understand why people don't give their best. I don't. And there's people that just, it's not that big a deal. And that drives me crazy. And that is an area where if I had to manage, coach, or be over people that had that kind of personality, they couldn't work for me, and it wouldn't last.
Yeah, and I think it's that competitiveness that also, just for you personally, just adds to another link in the chain of your success.
I think so, and it always had this vision of, all right, how do I find my way out of the hole, or how do I find my way out of this situation? How do I rally kind of my brain, whether it's the years and years of training, rehabbing, overcoming injuries, surgeries. Those are the kind of things that I think of like a puzzle. And if you don't have that approach in certain areas, not in all of them, then you find yourself getting stuck, or you find yourself, kind of succumbing to the information or the arena that you're in. And I think the one thing that served me well was that at an early age, literally playing the accordion, having to get up and practice hours and hours, and learning how to be disciplined. That set the stage for when my sports took off. It would kind of was already embedded.
Let's get into the DNA, the genetics. So the older I've gotten, the more I realize that, everybody's born with a talent, whether it's to write music, to play an instrument.
Right. They're
good at math, which I'm okay with, not good at English.
Yeah.
They're good at sports, and it's just, and everybody has a success factor in their lives, which unfortunately a lot of people never tap into.
Right.
And someone like yourself was able to link into that. Like you said, you're able to find a passion early in life that drove you. And so, like earlier on, I think you said that it's, just genetically, there's a part of that it's a huge player.
Yeah, well, everybody from the age that you can first recognize the room, let's say of kids your age, as they all recognize where they fit in the room. Maybe not the worst, not the best. Everyone wants to be average until you realize, and I realized I was not going to use that as a measuring stick. Being comfortable, we have too much technology, too much information, and kids buy in real early about, I can't do this, you can't do this. It's 1% chance to make the major leagues. It's this. And so it already flatlines a lot of kids' dreams because the pressure and the social awareness of what's going on, right? And I was never, fortunately, because when you play the accordion, you don't care about social awareness. You don't care about being the geek or the goofy guy. And I never allowed that to be a measuring stick or telling me, you can't do this, you can't do that, look at the odds, look at the numbers. And so from a genetic standpoint, one of the things that I was fearless about, because I had lack of knowledge and lack of fear, that's the biggest thing. We have too much fear that suffocates greatness. And so as a player who grew up doing what I did and then ultimately makes the Hall of Fame, most people say, well, that's easy for you to say. But when you follow the storyline and you realize that we're all capable of maximizing our opportunity, discovering our gift, our passion. I tell parents all the time, if your son or daughter has a passion that is pure or relatively good, I'm not talking about a bad one, if you can give them the opportunity to pursue that passion, they're going to turn out all right. Because the reason they're passionate is not because of what you as a parent is trying to drive in that child, right? So it comes out of nowhere sometimes. And genetically, you don't know what they're predestined to be, right? We all choose what we think we're going to be through the eyes of our knowledge as parents. We're like, oh, my son or daughter is going to be this. You have no idea what they're going to be.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time, that's becoming more and more true. The sport usually chooses you. So genetically, I was able to do things that most kids my age couldn't. I didn't understand why my flexibility and elbow would go way back and I could throw the baseball relatively easy. And then you learn how to evolve around that. But if you don't have a lot of components that accompany that kind of genetics, if you don't have the drive, the discipline, they don't mean as much. You know,
Yeah.
genetics will take you farther than most people, but it won't guarantee that you're going to be an expert or great at that sport.
Yeah, there's a motivational speaker named Les Brown, and one of the things he says is the richest place or the richest places on the earth is a graveyard, because so many people go to their death never tapping into their true potential because of fear.
Right.
They were afraid to do what they thought that they could, go to that next level or to do what they had passion for.
And the other thing most people don't talk about is failure. We want everybody like you. We raise young kids and we want them all to win at everything. Like, oh, never let them experience any. Failure is a great opportunity to learn how to be great, because you learn from your best mistakes. And that's what athletics, I know people get kind of sideways on the spectrum of how far does athletics push, how does it go too far? And I think the greatest lessons that I've learned have been some of my greatest failures. And we don't talk about failure because I don't think we really understand what it can do. We as parents try to keep our kids from falling, getting hurt, making mistakes, failing. And the next thing we do is we inhibit them the ability to overcome any challenges that come in their life, not to mention outside of sports that would be a good lesson for them to learn.
You mentioned to me one time, which I thought was very interesting, and then we talked about taking some time off of sports up in Michigan, but you mentioned to me one time about if you take a athlete that's a good athlete and you take them away from that sport for a year. Remember talking about that?
I do. I have this theory, it's going to be almost impossible to produce. And the theory is this. All right, give me a 12-year-old. Give me the top 5 12-year-olds in every sport. Every sport in a city, I don't care what the city range is, population. Well, you can identify. We have the technology and the opportunity in the eyes to identify that young girl and that young boy are the top 1% in their field. And my philosophy is this. We are trying so hard to mass produce these great athletes that we are overexposing them to their own sport, and we're using and abusing the opportunity to become great. And it's burnout, injury, and my philosophy is this. Let's say they're baseball players. I've got the top 5 sitting in this room. I convinced the parents in the city that we're going to pay you to not have your son or daughter play for 2 years. I'm going 2 years.
2 years.
I want to make the.
It was 1 year, 2 years.
Yeah,
okay.
I want to make the shock real. And they can't train. They can't do anything. They can do other things, but they can't play that sport. My philosophy is in 2 years they'll still be the top 5 in their sport. And when you think about that, the brain goes, "Oh, you're crazy. We're going to lose 2 years of training from." No, there's a genetic component that exists that we don't identify and give credit to that is far greater than the 9 to 5, 2,000 swings a week, bullpens, you name it. That will get that person to a level that has a peak.
Yeah.
There's no way to go over that. You can train to be better, but it's hard to train to create genetic freak or an athlete. And that's where parents are, I think, have this misconception that all these entities outside the sport that are promoting this, they're actually confusing the parents to think you're going to make that genetic freak athlete. You're going to get that scholarship. You're going to be a professional in that sport. And it's a business that is churning and burning. And you know what ends up happening? Even in the burnout scenario, the genetically gifted player always survives, minus career-ending injuries. They always survive because they have the ability to adapt better than the others.
Yep, exactly. Thought that was an interesting little...
I wish it could happen.
Yeah.
I wish I could convince some mayor or some city to do this study. We'd have to pay the family because because I don't think they could sit by on the and use an experiment to and maybe we go 10, 11 and ease the pain of the teenage years.
All right, lady luck. You always hear people say, "Oh, they got lucky break," or "They got a lucky this," or "They got lucky that." You know, and I think possibly it's more that not so much luck, but that you're putting yourself in the right place and you're not putting yourself in the wrong place.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, I had this, again, this came out of nowhere as a child. I was raised in a great family, had incredible guidance, faith-based, and two wonderful parents who taught me how to navigate my dream. But I also believe in what you're saying is that if you can avoid some of the pitfalls, I call them hurdles along the way. There are people that try to navigate you away from your dream because they don't think it's possible and they want you to have more fun doing X, Y, Z. But I think to your point, if you're able to produce an environment that creates structure, that creates the right way of doing things, you'll be more apt and ready to take advantage of a good break or something that comes your way. Because there's going to be a lot of doors that close. And most people never, like I have this word picture. We're in this room right here. And if there was 4 doors way out, 4 doors out, this is what I think some people do based on their philosophy in sports. They go to the one door, it's locked. They see no other way out. It's like, there was my chance. No other way out. Some people will actually notice another door. They'll go to that door. It's locked. Well, I had 2 chances. But the greatness of people realize there's got to be another way. And there's got to be opportunities. Never shut the doors on your career or your journey until you are not able to either physically talented to do it. I always say, why not strive to go as far as your gifted genetics take you, right? Like, don't just succumb to, all right, well, that's only for those kind of people or people who can throw 95 miles an hour. So I look at that philosophy and say, I'm going to exhaust every opportunity because that 4th door might be the door that goes, wow, I'm glad I searched the first 3 because I learned something in the 4th. Now I'm out and I'm experiencing, you know, life at the highest level.
And I got a personal question for you. Are chicken wings lucky?
Are chicken wings lucky? I've never seen chicken wings being necessarily lucky.
Because there's when the team's on a batting, they're on a rally.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there? If you're eating something,
I think what happens is if you decide to do something in unison with what's going on to create a change in that, you know, rally factor. I think what you're talking about is that we decided, a player and I, like, we're going to eat some chicken wings in the clubhouse during a game to promote a rally. Well, what ends up happening is the rally's going, so you can't stop eating chicken wings.
Yes.
And the rally gets to a point where it's a miraculous comeback. So yes, I think you can replace chicken wings with another thing. But yes, at that point, repeating that was very essential for us.
I heard you say that on the broadcast, and I thought that was brilliant because I personally think chicken wings are very lucky. I eat them at every Georgia football game. So yeah, it's critical to throw in. Yeah. Right. All right, let's get down to some advice time. We already hit on a lot of advice, but you know, maintaining a healthy baseball player, whether it's a youth player, adult player, teenage. We hit on possibly, you know, some rest time and whatnot, but are there other things that you could maybe?
I think the biggest thing, especially let's just talk about baseball, there's 9 positions, right? Not all are the same. Not all can have the attributes to say, are there certain individuals that could play all 9? Yeah, but it's rare. And I think the ability to play the sport, understanding some of the limitations and some of the things that go with it. With everything in sports, if you have bad mechanics, you've got an increased chance of injury and a less chance of success. So no matter what you try to do, no matter how strong you try to get, again, I never lifted weights as a young kid. It was kind of flexible, genetics, feel, learn. As I got older and went to the big leagues, I learned how to balance, weight training with cardio, with eating. I think with anything that I could say, when there's balance behind it, good things happen. When there's a tilt of balance in one way or the other, you bring in the chances of bad things that can happen. And so my advice is always to parents is, A, you got time with your child, which nobody thinks they do. It's like, oh no, he's 6 and he hasn't thrown a curveball yet, or he hasn't hit a homer yet. That's throw that out the window. But I'm big into, if you can teach the child the proper mechanics, they may not be ready at 8. They may not be ready at 10. Not everybody has the license to pitch, play short, play first. It may take time. And the more you ramp and kind of rush a child into, the greater chance they're going to reject or have a bad experience that no longer allows them to want to do it. So this is age appropriate, but it also is specific to when you're trying to develop a talent, or you see something in a young boy or girl and you go, oh, that's it. Not necessarily. So I think balance is a huge key to everything that we do, including playing time, preparation, training, and overuse.
You know what? And balance, when we go back to how we first started, balance to everything we do. Father,
Yeah.
grandfather, husband.
But you got to understand, nobody's listening to this.
Yeah.
Because the information outside that's pouring in, I call it, if parents have a funnel, they're getting so much information and opportunity to create that funnel of information for their child to go, they're getting a college scholarship because of this.
Yeah.
And if they had an opportunity to really kind of, if there was a way, I know we have too much technology that's taking us in places we don't want to go, but if there was a technology that allowed the parents to pause, see from 30,000 feet what's going on this level, they would go, oh my goodness, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But they don't have that, and it's all well intended, most cases, but it's the entity in the business outside of sports that is promoting this narrative. If your child does this, this, and this, they got a great chance to do this, this, and this. And most of that is college, right? You got to get to college before you can go to pro. And I say to parents all the time, if they could take the time and look back, 7 years they spent paying, preparing, and enabling their child to play the sport, they will have paid for 2 scholarships. And their child may get the scholarship, but they will have paid for 2. And that is the most amazing phenomenon, because the studies that are going on right now with Dr. Andrews' group and all these physicians, they're trying their best to eliminate injuries. And injuries are at the highest rate and no one's paying attention. It's like a Band-Aid. Oh, we got a Tommy John? No big deal. Let's just wait a year and a half at 9 years old, and let's just, because it's going to be better. There's too many myths they're listening to. And I think guys like me now, who are old, and unless you're in my age group, you may not even know I played baseball. We don't know what we're talking about. That's the sad part, because our voices are being drowned out by the new age philosophies that are promoting, but let's face it, they're making a ton of money. This is not non-profit organizations that just want to help your child. They're putting money in their pocket along the way trying to help your child. And I'm not saying that this is all bad. I'm saying, again, out of balance, bad.
Well, let's end on some John Smoltz keys to success, or strategies to success, whether, just some bullet points of what you would say just as a human being, not just an athlete.
I think the first thing I always say, we've lost the ability to dream. I don't care what it is. We've lost the ability to dream. If you ask a youngster, what's your dreams? If you ask a entrepreneur, what's your dreams? Very small, select group of people have dreams and aspirations. So if you don't have something that you're setting your standards for that are high, you're never going to reach them, right? You're only going to set the average, kind of like, I can do this, so let me stay here. I don't want to get outside my comfort zone. So the first key to success, I always say, is dream big. I don't care what it is. And keep chasing those dreams. You never know what's going to happen. But if you don't have a strategy or game plan after your dreams of what you do, then it's going to be by the seat of your pants. You're going to bounce around a lot. I think dreaming, structure, discipline, and that passion. You know, how do you infuse passion into someone? Well, that's like saying, how do you infuse genetics into someone?
Yeah.
It comes naturally if allowed to happen. But I think that the roadmap for me and the roadmap, I can fire up anybody for one day. I can fire up a corporation, a team, an individual. I feel like I have the ability to fire somebody up. But what happens after I leave? Or what happens after that fired up moment? It's not like football, you can run through a wall. You've got to have actionable items that you follow up on. It's got to be, if you're going to change your habits and change your, let's just say, workouts or trying to, that's why New Year's resolutions never work. It's like great at the moment, but no actionable follow-ups. And I would say lastly that in all of the things that I've said, you cannot, under any circumstances, be afraid to fail. Yeah. You cannot be afraid to fail, because that takes you away from anything potentially great that could happen. And what failure does is it suffocates the opportunity that when you're in a moment for success, you're going to know how to handle it once you've experienced failure. There's very few people, if any, that have succeeded from the day one to the end and never failed. So we all want success, but we got to understand you can't be afraid to fail. And the last point I'll share is when you get outside your comfort zone, let's say this is your comfort zone. You get outside, it exposes you. It creates tension. Because when you're outside your comfort zone, you're like, ooh, wait a minute, that's different. I don't know. Like, I want to crawl back into the comfort zone that I'm in. And we all have it. Muscle memory, we have the mental comfort zone, the physical comfort zone. But what that does is creates movement. Movement towards something, like your goal or success, or movement away from something. And people generally don't like, this is comfortable, right? If we had to sit on spikes, it probably wouldn't be as comfortable.
We'd be moving. But the deal is, in my professional career, there were a lot of times I was outside my comfort zone. And if I was afraid to fail, gone. Yeah. If I was afraid to get to that point of learning what that does, and there's so much learning outside your comfort zone that, I use this last analogy. Par in golf is perfect, right? 72, everyone wants to shoot par. Imagine coming down the stretch and you got a chance to shoot your best round ever. Well, what happens? Nobody's making you nervous. Nobody's putting any condition. You get nervous. Yeah. You get outside your comfort zone. You're thinking about things you wouldn't think about. Those are learning moments, so that the next time you get to that position, you can learn from it. Well, John, it's been a pleasure having you with us today and sharing a lot of great information, some good digestive stuff. And I wish you the best in your golf and everything you're going to do. I know you got a lot of great things.
I'm still dreaming. I'm 56.
I know you are.
And I'm still dreaming. And I'm not afraid to have people say you're crazy, because I'll find out later if I am or not. But I'm not going to stop dreaming.
Thanks, brother.
Yep.